The day Lydia Cole's flight landed 2 hours early in Chicago, she thought it was finally her luck turning around. She had spent 5 days at a residential interior design workshop in Portland, the kind she had been waitlisted for twice before finally getting a spot. She had packed carefully, kissed her daughter Rin goodbye at the door, reminded her husband Joel that Rin's soccer practice was Thursday at 4, and boarded her flight with the quiet, guilty thrill of a woman who had not been alone in 11 years. The workshop had been everything she hoped. She slept through whole nights. She ate dinner without cutting anyone else's food first. She sat in seminars and listened to people talk about her work, her actual work, with the kind of attention she had stopped expecting at home years ago. When the final session wrapped a day and a half early, due to the lead instructor's sudden illness, Lydia felt the familiar deflation settle in her chest. Back to real life. Back to the house where her opinions ended at the front door. She had texted Joel from the Portland airport. Coming home early. Flight lands at 2. No reply. She assumed he was in a meeting. Their house was a 4-bedroom colonial on the quieter end of Maple Crest Drive in Naperville. The kind of neighborhood where the lawns competed with each other, and nobody ever said anything directly. Lydia had chosen the paint colors, the fixtures, the curtain fabric in every room. Joel had chosen the neighborhood because his college friend Darren lived 4 blocks over, which meant impromptu backyard grills that Lydia was somehow always expected to prepare food for. Rin was at school. Lydia had already checked. Pickup wasn't until 3:15, and the carpool was handled by Darren's wife, Bet, on Wednesdays. So the house should have been empty. She noticed the black Audi when her Lyft pulled up to the curb, parked slightly too close to their mailbox, the way someone parks when they're not expecting to be seen. She didn't recognize the car. She paid the driver, pulled her rolling bag up the front walk, and let herself in with her key. The kitchen smelled like coffee that had been brewing recently. Joel's jacket was slung over the back of the bar stool. The good jacket, the charcoal canali one he kept for client dinners. At 2 in the afternoon on a Wednesday, she stood in the entryway for a moment, listening. Then she heard it. Laughter. From upstairs. A woman's laugh, low and easy, the kind of laugh that only exists between two people who are completely relaxed around each other. Lydia did not move for what felt like a long time. She thought about her daughter. She thought about the curtains in the living room that she had spent 3 weeks sourcing from a small manufacturer in North Carolina. She thought about the Sunday 2 months ago when Joel had told her she was too reactive because she had asked him why he'd come home at midnight smelling like a bar. And she had believed him, or at least told herself she believed him, because the alternative was something she was not ready to name. She set her bag down quietly next to the coat rack. She walked to the kitchen counter and poured herself a glass of water. Her hands were steady. She was surprised by that. She heard footsteps above her. Movement. The soft, distinct sound of a door closing. Lydia sat down at the kitchen island and waited. Joel came downstairs first. He was in his work clothes from the waist down. Dress pants, belt, but wearing a t-shirt she didn't recognize. He stopped when he saw her. His face did something complicated that she watched with a kind of detached curiosity. The way you watch a person try to open a locked door they expected to be open. "You're home early," he said. "Workshop ended early," she said. He nodded slowly, as if this were a reasonable problem that could be managed. "I didn't get your text. I sent it from the Portland airport, about 4 hours ago." He reached for his phone on the counter, deliberately she noticed, not urgently, buying seconds. Battery's been acting up. She looked at him. "There's someone upstairs." Joel's face did the thing again. "That's Lydia. I can explain." "I'm sure you can," she said. "I'm not asking you to. Not right now." She heard the woman come downstairs. Lydia turned and looked at her directly. Wanted to, needed to, because she had learned a long time ago that the things you refuse to look at have a way of growing larger in the dark. She was maybe 33. Dark hair, still a little disheveled. She was wearing what appeared to be one of Joel's dress shirts over her own jeans, untucked, which Lydia found almost impressive in its brazenness. She stopped on the last step when she saw Lydia and had the decency to look mortified. "You should leave," Lydia said to her. Not unkindly, just clearly. The woman, she introduced herself as no one, said nothing, just nodded once, picked up her purse from the couch, where it had apparently been sitting the whole time, and let herself out the front door. The Audi pulled away from the curb 30 seconds later. Joel started talking. Lydia let him. She had learned, in 11 years, that Joel talked best when he thought she was listening, and she had learned to use that. He said the woman's name was Tara. He said it had only been a few months. He said it had been a difficult year, and that he hadn't felt connected to Lydia in a long time, and that he wanted to work on things. He said he was sorry. He said it again, looking at her with the expression she recognized as the one he used when he needed her to absorb something so that life could continue as arranged. Lydia said, "Okay, I need to pick up Ren at 3:15. Joel blinked. Is that all you want to say?" "No," she said, "but the rest can wait." She went upstairs, stripped the bed, started the laundry, and took a shower. She stood under the water for a long time. She did not cry, and she was not sure whether that was strength or numbness, but she decided it did not matter right now. What mattered was the next thing, and then the thing after that. The next 3 weeks were the most organized of Lydia's adult life. She called her older sister, Pamela, in Cincinnati that same evening, after Ren was asleep. Pamela had been through her own divorce 6 years earlier, and had come out the other side with more clarity and less tolerance for nonsense than anyone Lydia had ever met. Pamela said 3 things. Find a lawyer, document everything, and don't tell Joel what you're planning. Lydia wrote them down, though she already knew. She called an attorney named Frances Delacroix the next morning. Frances was a small, precise woman who had been recommended by a colleague at Lydia's design studio. The studio that Joel had always referred to as Lydia's little project at dinner parties, which she had let go every single time, which she no longer intended to let go. Frances reviewed their assets over 2 meetings and confirmed what Lydia had suspected. Because she had continued to operate her business as a sole proprietorship under her own name, with her own accounts, her revenue stream was cleanly separable. Joel's name was not on her business account. He had never asked to be added, because he had never taken it seriously enough to think it worth his time. She had also, 7 years ago, inherited $46,000 from her grandmother Rosalind, which she had deposited into an investment account she'd opened in her own name 3 months before the inheritance arrived. Joel knew the inheritance existed. He did not know the account number, the institution, or the current balance. Lydia had never hidden it. She had simply never been asked, because Joel operated under the assumption that what was hers was also his to oversee, and had therefore never considered that she might have been quietly tending to something he hadn't approved. At Frances' advice, she moved that account to a different institution. She also opened a new checking account at a credit union across town and began routing her studio invoices to it. She continued coming home at the regular time. She cooked dinner 3 nights a week, as usual. She helped Ren with her reading homework and attended her soccer game on Saturday and made polite conversation with the other parents on the sideline. Joel had been walking around the house for 2 weeks, with the careful, slightly overcompensating behavior of a man who was waiting to find out what his punishment would be. He brought her flowers once, hydrangeas, her least favorite, and said again that he wanted to go to counseling. She said she would think about it. She needed him to believe there was still something to salvage, because a man who believes he is losing something slowly behaves very differently than a man who knows it is already gone. In the 3rd week, she found a 2-bedroom apartment in Elmhurst, 11 minutes from Ren's school. It was on the 2nd floor of a building with a small courtyard and good natural light from the west-facing windows. The rent was reasonable. She filled out the application under her own name, gave her studio as her place of employment, and paid the security deposit from her new account. She told the building manager she would be moving in on the 1st of the month. She told no one except Pamela. She began moving things quietly. Not furniture. Furniture was visible, but the small, irreplaceable things, the box of her grandmother's letters that lived on the top shelf of her closet, the portfolio of her first design projects from before she and Joel met, Ren's baby photos that were stored in albums under the bed, her grandmother Rosalind's pearl earrings that had been sitting in the back of her jewelry drawer since the funeral. 1 bag, 2 bags, into the back of her car, driven to the apartment on Tuesday and Thursday mornings, when she dropped Ren at school, and Joel was already at the office. She also had a conversation with Ren. Not a full one. Ren's was 9, and 9-year-olds deserve truth in portions they can hold. She said that she and Daddy had been having some grown-up disagreements, and that things at home might be changing soon, but that Ren would always have both of them, that her room would always be hers wherever they were, and that nothing about this had anything to do with anything Ren had done or not done. Ren had asked if they were getting divorced. Lydia had said she didn't know yet, which was technically true, though Frances had already begun drafting the paperwork. Ren had thought for a moment and then said, "Okay." Can I bring my lamp? You can bring anything you want, Lydia said. On the last Thursday of the month, Joel left for work at 8:15 as usual. Lydia watched his car back out of the driveway and waited until it disappeared around the corner. Then she called her friend Darsha, who had a truck and had known about all of this since week 2, and had been waiting with what Lydia could only describe as righteous patience. Darsha arrived at 8:45 with the truck and her younger brother, who didn't ask questions and moved boxes fast. Lydia had a list. She had been thinking about the list for 3 weeks. It was specific and fair. She took Wren's things, her own things, the kitchen items she had brought into the marriage, or purchased herself the small blue love seat from the guest room that had been her grandmother's, the box of Wren's school art projects stored in the hallway closet, and nothing else. She did not take the dining table Joel had picked out, or the television, or the expensive espresso machine he had given himself for his birthday, and pretended was a gift for both of them. By 12:30, they were done. The house looked, from a distance, mostly the same. Joel would not immediately know what was missing. He would walk in, feel a wrongness in the air, and have to walk room by room to understand it. She left the envelope on the kitchen island, the same spot where she had sat and watched his face 3 weeks ago. Inside was a single document, a formal notification from Francis Delacroix's office that Lydia had retained counsel and intended to file for divorce, along with a proposed parenting schedule that Francis had drafted with primary placement for Wren during the school week, and Joel's attorney's instructions. No note, no explanation, no fight. She locked the front door for the last time at 12:42 and put the key in the lockbox that Francis had told her to use. She called Wren's school from the car and arranged to pick her up a little early. When Wren climbed into the back seat and asked where they were going, Lydia said, "I want to show you your new room." Wren was quiet for a moment. Then, "Does it have a window?" "West-facing?" Lydia said. "Gets beautiful light in the afternoon." Wren seemed to decide this was acceptable. She put her backpack on the seat beside her and looked out the window at the familiar streets going by. Joel called at 5:17. Lydia let it go to voicemail. He called again at 5:40. Then a text, "Lydia, please call me." "What is this?" Then, "Where's Wren? Is she okay?" She replied to that one. "Wren is fine. She's with me. She's safe." Because that was the only question he was entitled to an answer to right now. She did not read the rest of the messages that came in over the next hour. She ordered pizza for dinner. Wren sat on the floor of the empty living room while they waited, testing the acoustics by saying her own name and listening to it bounce back. Lydia sat against the wall and watched her daughter discover the apartment with that pragmatic, unfazed curiosity that 9-year-olds bring to most situations, the kind that adults call resilience because they've forgotten they once had it too. When the pizza arrived, they ate it on paper plates by the west-facing window. The afternoon light was coming in exactly as Lydia had imagined. It was not a triumphant moment. It was not a clean one. There was still everything ahead of her. The lawyers, the conversations, the long and administrative dismantling of a shared life. There would be nights that were harder than this one. There would be moments she doubted herself, and moments she missed the version of her marriage she had believed she was in. That was true, and she knew it. But she had made the list. She had moved the boxes. She had sat at that kitchen island and made her face completely still while her life rearranged itself around her. And she had not once let Joel see what she was planning, because she had understood something in that moment that she might not have been able to say out loud, but that she knew with absolute certainty. The only way out of a life that was built around someone else's convenience was to stop asking for permission to leave. Darsha texted that evening, "How are you doing?" Lydia looked around the room. The lamp from Wren's old room was glowing in the corner. Wren had fallen asleep on her travel pillow on the floor, the pizza box still open beside her. "Good," Lydia typed back. Actually good, she meant it, and that, after everything, was the most surprising thing of all.